Today I'd like to show you a system I designed so I could easily find books in my library. This here is part of my library. After my collection went past the 2000 book marker, I had to design a rolling bookshelf. This allows me to store books on the back shelf, and the front shelf books move, so you can access all the back books and all the front books depending on where you've moved the front shelves. The next problem I ran into is how do you find a book in this massive collection? Well, some guy named Dewey came up with a system for libraries, but I think the only people that understand that is librarians. So, this is what I came up with. Oops, sorry, let me turn it over. Now, doesn't this make a lot more sense than Dewey's 114.3? My design goal was simplicity. As you can see, the marker is very visual and very easily moved from point A to point B, and then back again if you need to. Additional design characteristics include segmenting the shelves into columns, then placing an ID at the top of the column to identify the genre of the book. For example, I can have Sci-Fi 1, Sci-Fi 2, Sci-Fi 3, or Mystery, or whatever. Then I can go back and place labels on each shelf within the column. So the top shelf is authors that start with A, then B, then C, and so on. As you collect books or get rid of books, you'll find your marker needs to be moved in order to stay in line with the author that you're trying to indicate. As you can see, this is very easily accomplished. Want to put more than one marker on the shelf? Not a problem. Don't have a lot of authors that start with X, Y, or Z? Just combine them on one marker. You may want to combine all the books in a particular series, despite them having different authors. So your aliens are on one shelf, and your predator books will be on another shelf. Or you can mix things up. You can have markers for specific authors you really like John W. Campbell, and in between those authors, just have alphabetical markers. Okay, let's see how it's done. Each marker has three basic parts: a wood biscuit, a piece of plywood, then some paper bonded onto the front of the plywood. If you're wondering what a biscuit is, it's a highly compressed piece of wood. When it's exposed to moisture, it actually swells up. This property makes it very useful for joining two boards end to end. The tool that makes this happen is the biscuit joiner. The biscuit joiner has a unique cutting blade. It will actually cut a perfectly sized slot in a piece of wood in exactly the correct position. And this is how easy it is to use. When you're finished, this is what it'll look like. Placing a biscuit into this groove will leave exactly half of the biscuit sticking out of the wood. Now that the slots are actually cut in your bookshelves, let's move on to cutting the plywood. Thin plywood is easily cut with a bandsaw. It doesn't tear the plywood up and leaves a nice clean cut. I start out by cutting long strips, then reposition your guide so you can cut all the markers to the same width. If you have a big library, you'll want to make sure you cut out a lot of markers. Now, I don't like sharp corners that you can hurt yourself on while you're reaching in for your book, so I cut off the top corner of the markers at a 45-degree angle. We're finished cutting plywood. It's time to glue on the paper. This job is very easy if you use this 3M Super 77 spray adhesive. Simply line up the plywood that you've cut out and put a nice even spray coat on them. Then you take your paper, I like to use heavy construction grade paper, and carefully lay it on top of your plywood. You'll want to put weight on it to hold it in place while it's curing. A board and a 30-pound chunk of steel works pretty nice. After the glue is cured, go ahead and turn the paper over. Take a sharp X-Acto blade, then cut each marker out. Please ignore the cuts on my hands. That came from a different project. Our next step, gluing on the biscuits. I use Gorilla Glue. Remember earlier when I said biscuits expand when exposed to moisture? Well, regular glues like Elmer's have a lot of moisture in them, and they would probably cause the biscuit to deform. Gorilla Glue, on the other hand, actually uses moisture from the air to activate itself. So you'll get a nice tight bond, and your biscuit will maintain its shape. I apply a very light coat of glue to half of the biscuit. I place the biscuit on the plywood, leaving the unglued half of the biscuit hanging off the bottom of the marker. That's the part that's going to go into the bookshelf. After all the biscuits are in place, you'll need to apply pressure again. Carefully place your board, then your 30-pound chunk of steel. Keep an eye on the cup that you put your glue into. When it hardens, you know your biscuits are done baking. Go ahead and remove your weight. And there you have it. You now have a better way to find books in your library. Hey, thanks for watching.